One of my first assignments as a news reporter was to find the family of a hit-and-run victim and ask them for comment about their deceased loved one. Not the most heartwarming assignment for a newly minted reporter, but it was a rite of passage for sure. So my photographer and I, we pull up to the family's house, and I'm sitting in the car, my stomach is turning as I'm thinking about how I'm going to get this family to talk to me. And some of you will get the irony of this, but when I look up from the car at the house, I see 3 big windows covered in Confederate flags. So I thought, it's okay, you can laugh. I thought this could go really well. So anyways, I put on my best Oprah face, I took a deep breath, I went and I knocked on the door, and to my surprise, someone actually opened. It was the victim's aunt. And with a little persuading, I got her to talk to me. And you know what? I ended up spending the entire afternoon there talking to her, the victim's uncle, even meeting the victim's children. One was a little girl, no older than 5 years old, and at one point during my stay, she came up to me and she said, my daddy's not coming back again. And even though her words almost brought me to tears, in that moment, I realized something. It would have been much easier that day not to knock on the door, to go to a neighbor's house, to come up with an excuse for why this family wouldn't want to talk to me. But in confronting the uncomfortable in search of the truth, I could actually do justice to this man's story. And on that day, I learned what it meant to have courage in reporting. Courage is defined as the mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. Now, whether you're an official journalist or somebody who just wants to tell your story, we all have opportunities to put our courage in reporting to the test. The question is whether we will venture, whether we will persevere to uncover the truths, big and small, that our society needs the most. But the amazing thing is that people are already doing it, using the tools of the digital age and social media to get their stories and reports across to global audiences. From viral hashtags that you simply can't forget, to viral photos like this one. This was taken by a Target shopper. Her name was Audrey Mark. She saw a young man looking for a tie, and he didn't just get a tie, he ended up being taught how to tie that tie and how to prepare for his job interview by Target employees. She was so moved by this moment that she had to take the picture. Of course, she puts it online. It goes crazy all over social media, 55,000 likes on Facebook. It even made it to network news. And if you're wondering, yes, the young man did get the job. The market for user-generated content like this is so popular that even legacy news outlets like CNN and NBC News are making investments to get your stories. CNN with its ever-popular iReport, which uses citizen journalism, NBC News with its acquisition of StringWire, which was a startup that takes live streaming from your cell phones, verifies that content, and then pushes it out into the world. So basically, it's crowdsourcing breaking news, which only goes to show that we are already in an era where we, the people, are determining what stories are told and how they are told, along with the mainstream journalists. In many ways, you are reporters too. Now, there are cons to putting the power to publish in just anyone's hands. We've got everything from Twitter trolls to violence recorded and captured as entertainment, to the Kylie Jenner lip challenge, which I refuse to show you pictures from because it is just so bad. But anybody who saw it on the internet knows that it's very scary. Regardless of all this noise, I think that there is a case to be made for having more eyes and ears on the ground, more voices in the conversation, because with the tools and the courage, more people can report eyewitness accounts like this one. Captured by 23-year-old Fadine Santana, a barber who immigrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic. It was Santana who hung up his cell phone call just in time to capture Officer Michael Slager, shoot North Charleston resident Walter Scott as he ran away during a traffic stop arrest. At the risk of retaliation, Santana turned over this video, which eventually led to charges of murder for the South Carolina officer, a rare outcome in a story that often ends so differently. Imagine for a second if this video hadn't existed, though. As a reporter, I think of press conferences being called, official reports of the incident passed down, questions perhaps, but no way to imagine this, even for law enforcement to know. Without this video, the truth about how Walter Scott died may have gone undiscovered. And it was Santana, an everyday person, no fancy press pass or credential, just an everyday person who flipped that narrative. And this wasn't just about being at the right place at the right time. It was about something more. This was about the courage to report. And I'm going to give you a very important reason why we should show the courage to report. This is about strength in mind and heart and doing something for the greater good, something bigger than ourselves. I had a 7th grade teacher. His name was Mr. Freeland, everybody's favorite, the toughest one in class. He would teach us this saying: "He who controls the images controls the language and thus controls the people." So, take for example these images. Seeing them could certainly control a story. They could change the language about what is happening on the ground. They could give you an impression of who people are. But if you incorporate these images, suddenly there's more nuance, more complexity. You might start to understand that story a little bit differently. You might even start to understand the people differently. And this is exactly what happened in our nation's media coverage of Baltimore. In the aftermath of the funeral for Freddie Gray, the young African-American man who was critically injured in police custody and later died, leaving a city and a nation in complete unrest. Like Ferguson and other places before it, there was some incredible reporting on the ground in Baltimore about what was happening. But there was also some not so incredible reporting, and yet, as information was emerging, there was this phenomenon of the public talking back, actually challenging media narratives, right? Did Freddie Gray break his own spine? Were gangs teaming up to target police officers? Were people rioting just to loot or because they were tired of being unheard? You know, they always say there are two sides to a story, but the truth is, and I work in media, sometimes you only get one. Thankfully, there were reporters and citizen journalists and people on the ground who had the courage to try to answer these questions even when some people thought they already knew what the answers were. You don't have to sympathize with Baltimore's protests or rioting to understand the very important need to have all sides of a story told, to uncover all truths. Because it's in truth that we can be challenged to grow, that we can learn, that we can get better together. But I'm not selling you a perfect package. Everything has a cost, as many of us know. I think of journalists who right now are being attacked and killed around the world simply for trying to uncover the truth. Journalists like James Foley, who was brutally murdered by ISIS last summer as I was about to graduate from Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism, the same school that he went to. When James Foley died, it was a wake-up call for me, that this profession of truth-telling was a lot more than fun and games and glamour and being in front of the camera. But Foley's courage to tell the truth of those suffering in Syria gave me courage too. If he and others like him could risk their lives, why couldn't I ask tough questions about failing schools in Rochester? Find out why babies here die at twice the rate of the national average. Investigate why we are the 5th poorest large metropolitan city in the country. Why couldn't I simply knock on an unfamiliar door? Born out of this want to encourage you all to report and uncover truth, I'm about to share my own today in a poem. And it is inspired by journalists like Ida B. Wells, who didn't hide behind a veneer of false balance, but she faced the issues of her day head on. If you're not familiar with her, she wrote about lynching in the United States at a time when people did not want to talk about it or acknowledge it as a problem. I dedicate this poem to her and all the other truth seekers and troublemakers who have the courage to report. The thing about courage is that those of us who have it get in trouble. We see an injustice and we speak. We sometimes feel too strong and think too deep, and we are told to quiet down. Stop demolishing structures that are designed to oppress. But the courageous won't bear suffering in silence or accept less than the best. If you care more about a Baltimore CVS than lives lost, I ask, where is your courage? The thing about courage is that those of us who have it are persecuted, told we are too bold, not tied to politically correct strongholds, so they want to break us. From Emmett Till to Malcolm X to Michael B. Break us. Eric Garner, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, they broke him literally. Break us. Renisha McBride, Rakia Boyd, Tamir Rice, Jordan Davis, Oscar Grant, Trayvon Martin, so many have died for daring to fight back in acts big or small, striking Zimmermans who challenged them for walking down the streets of life with their backs too tall. Blasting music that they wouldn't turn down, called ignorant for wearing crowns, killers eating pizza after shooting them down. But the courageous still rise from heaven. The thing about courage is that it is a heavy cross to bear. You'll be cursed in the present, thoroughly resented, then called a hero once it's fashionable to care. It's hypocrisy. If the Baltimore kids didn't throw stones, we would judge them for sitting at home, right? If 10,000 people just peacefully marched through the streets, would it have made it on the news that night? Meanwhile, bystanders are the real sinners. Their silence, a passive yet effective killer. It does not matter your color. If you are quiet in the face of injustice, you betray your sister and brother. And like bad kids in social studies, we are just repeating history with chalk. Don't worry about textbooks that omit the truth. We might be one more unarmed death away from 1965 Watts. And then will we talk? That's why our courage is needed. I pleaded, whatever it costs you, pay the price. We can't just watch the news, speak the truth, then top it all off with Facebook likes. Filter the news feeds of our lives with people who only agree with us, right? No. Courage requires action and change. Whether you are Crips joining hands with Bloods or policemen and women fighting the good fight, teachers in the trenches with the youth, reporters and citizen journalists trying to get the story right, pastors marching, spreading the light. I believe in Jesus Christ. But we must do more than pray for Baltimore, or Ferguson, or New York City, or Chicago. Faith without works is dead. Do the work, America. Use your head. Do not ask why a pot is boiling over without looking at the fire this time instead. You can't let dreams defer and only celebrate the exceptions that flourish. Blame the victims for their wounds instead of love, judgment, nourish. To the entire world, we need your courage. It is what truly makes people great. And in this land of two Americas, courage and destiny, it does have a date. It's called the digital revolution. And it is finally being televised because this is 2015 and your cell phone is your eyes. So stand up, be a witness, speak the truth, do not compromise. And when they ask you why you have the audacity to uprise, Tell them you found your courage. Thank you.